Hey guys! Bored of those vocab lists? Me too. At 1 Degree North Companion, we're turning Wordly Wise into an adventure to make learning actually interesting. Let's jump in.
Today, we're going to dive deep into one of the planet's most powerful and, let's be honest, unpredictable forces, earthquakes. We're going to investigate not just what makes the very ground beneath our feet move, but also the big question: why can the exact same event have such wildly different consequences? Just imagine it for a second. Without any warning, the solid ground you stand on, the ground you trust completely, just stops being solid. It begins to lurch. It's a sudden, violent, stomach-dropping movement. Pictures fly off the walls, furniture starts sliding. This is exactly where our story kicks off, with that terrifying moment you realize the Earth itself is anything but fixed. And right away, we're faced with a really fascinating puzzle. Look at this. 2 huge earthquakes in the United States, San Francisco in 1906 and Alaska in 1964. Both of them registered an identical, absolutely massive 8.3 magnitude. And yet, look at the outcomes. They are dramatically different. To figure out why, we have to look past the numbers and really investigate the science of the shake itself. Now, when scientists investigate events like these, they're looking at something fundamental about our planet, the fact that it's fractured. And you know, that very idea of a catastrophic break has been with us for centuries. It's actually built right into our language. It's because of these fractures that certain parts of the world are more disaster-prone than others. In geology, when we say a region is prone, we mean it's naturally susceptible to things like earthquakes. Why? Because it sits on or near one of these huge active fault lines. Take Japan, for example. It's an extremely earthquake-prone country. And because of that, its urban centers are just marvels of engineering. They build skyscrapers designed to withstand intense shaking by swaying and flexing, instead of just cracking and falling apart. You see, being prone to something forces you to prepare. And to truly understand the risks in these prone areas, scientists have to investigate. I mean, this is the very heart of science, right? It's all about digging into the details, figuring out cause and effect, whether that's right here on Earth or millions and millions of miles away. In fact, and this is pretty cool, scientists today are investigating Mars quakes to learn more about the core of the red planet. By studying tremors on other worlds, we actually get a much deeper understanding of the fundamental physics that built our own planet. This idea of a planet being vulnerable brings us to a word we all use: disaster. The origin is fascinating. It actually comes to us from Latin, dis meaning against, and aster meaning star. So a disaster was literally an event that happened because the stars were aligned against you. The ancients saw a disaster as a fracture in your fate, in your destiny. And that word fracture is the perfect bridge for us. Because an earthquake isn't a fracture in fate. It's a very real, very physical fracture in the crust of our planet. So let's follow that connection from fate to physics. We're going to peel back the surface and look at the immense engine that drives all of these events: plate tectonics. Okay, so here's how it all works, in 4 basic steps. First, the Earth's crust isn't one solid shell. It's fractured into these immense things called tectonic plates. Second, intense heat from the planet's core keeps these plates in slow but constant motion. Third, as they drift around, they grind and rub against each other along those fracture lines, which we call faults. And finally, fourth, when the stress builds up and becomes too great, it's suddenly released, and the ground shakes. That right there is an earthquake. Now, we've all heard of the Richter scale, but here's something you might not know. The way it actually works is completely misunderstood by most people. It is not a simple 1-to-1 scale. And the math behind it, well, it's truly mind-blowing. Our source text says an 8.0 magnitude quake is more than 1,000 times as powerful as a 4.0. Now that sounds like a lot, right? But believe me, that is a massive understatement of the energy we're talking about. So what does powerful really mean here? What are we actually measuring? When we say an earthquake is powerful, what we're really talking about is the staggering amount of energy it unleashes. See, the Richter scale is logarithmic. That's just a fancy way of saying that for each whole number you go up, the energy released multiplies by about 32 times. So a magnitude 5 is 32 times more energetic than a 4. But a magnitude 6, that's over 1,000 times more energetic than a 4. You can see how quickly this just explodes. So let's get back to that 8.0 versus the 4.0. The energy difference isn't 1,000 times, it's over 1 million times more powerful. The potential for destruction is truly immense. But believe it or not, even that doesn't tell the whole story. Let's go back to our mystery. That 1964 Alaska earthquake taught us a critical lesson. Magnitude isn't everything. Sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't the shaking itself, but what that shaking does to the very ground you're standing on. In Anchorage, the intense shaking caused this terrifying phenomenon called soil liquefaction. Saturated soil lost all of its strength and literally started to behave like a liquid. Solid ground turned into something like quicksand, causing entire buildings to lurch, tilt sideways, and then just topple over, sometimes almost completely intact. And this is what brings all our cases into sharp focus. You have San Francisco in 1906, a dense urban center, then Alaska in 64, a very sparsely populated region, and then there's Huaihao County, China, back in 1556. This one is the single deadliest earthquake in all of recorded history. The estimated number of deaths from this single event is, well, it's almost unimaginable. Nearly 1 million people. Its magnitude is estimated to have been around an 8.0, very similar to our other examples. So what on earth made it so catastrophic? And here is the answer to our mystery. The immense death toll wasn't from skyscrapers toppling in an urban center. The people of Huaihao County lived in dwellings that were carved directly into cliffs made of soft soil. When the earthquake struck, these cliffs just collapsed, burying entire communities in an instant. It wasn't just the magnitude, it was the local geology combined with the way of life that created the perfect storm for a disaster. Understanding these disasters from the past really highlights the single biggest challenge that seismologists face today. We can investigate earthquakes, we can understand their mechanics, but there's one incredibly important thing we still can't do. And that is, as our source text says so clearly, we cannot accurately predict when an earthquake will happen. We know the prone areas, we know where the major fault lines are, but the precise timing? It's still a complete mystery. And this is exactly why understanding the risks and preparing for them is so critical. So I'll end with a challenge for you, a little thought experiment. If you live in an earthquake-prone region, how would you secure heavy furniture to prevent it from toppling over during intense shaking? Try to describe your plan using at least 3 of the keywords we've talked about today. Thinking about this isn't just an academic exercise. It's the kind of practical knowledge that can genuinely save lives. I hope this has been a helpful look at the incredible forces that are constantly shaking our world.
Hope you guys enjoyed that last lesson. If you did, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Ready for more? The next one starts right now.
Today, we're going to unravel a really profound and tragic story. It's about Hawaii's last monarch, a story all about power, about loss, and about one final, unforgettable gesture. I want you to picture this. The year is 1917. The world is at war. And in Honolulu, a queen, who no longer has a kingdom, Queen Liliuokalani, she slowly lowers the Hawaiian flag, and in its place, she raises the American flag. Now think about that. Why? Why would a deposed monarch raise the flag of the very nation that took her kingdom away? It's a question packed with so much history, and to get the answer, we have to go back and see what led her to this moment. So, to really get what happened here, we've got to understand the language of power that was being spoken at the time, words that described strategy and, failure. These aren't just vocabulary words, you know? They're the very actions that sealed the fate of an entire kingdom. All right, first up, we have abdicate. This isn't just, quitting your job. It's so much more. It's the formal and often really painful decision to give up a throne, a huge right, or a massive responsibility. It's the ultimate act of letting go of power. Let's put this in today's world. Imagine a CEO, right? The board is pressuring them. A rival company is trying a hostile takeover. They might have to abdicate their position, step down, to stop the whole company from being destroyed. It's a tough choice, a strategic sacrifice. Okay, so what's the flip side of giving up power? Well, it's taking it. Our next word is assume. This is when someone steps in and seizes control, especially when there's a power vacuum just waiting to be filled. Think about a sci-fi movie. A rogue AI hacks into a system and starts to assume control of the entire network. It's a quick, aggressive move to take over a really critical role. But, not every power grab is smooth. Sometimes they're just clumsy. That brings us to our next word, bungle. To bungle something means you've completely messed it up, handled it without any skill, and it's probably going to end in disaster. Let's go back to the spy world. Imagine agents on a top-secret mission. It's all going according to plan until they bungle the handoff. They drop the secret dossier right in front of the enemy. It's a total catastrophic failure, all because of one clumsy mistake. So we've talked about assuming control, but there's another level, something much more complete, and that's to dominate. When you dominate, you don't just rule. You rule so completely that there's simply no room for anyone to challenge you. In the corporate world, this happens all the time. A huge company might have a strategy to dominate the whole supply chain. They want to squeeze out all the smaller competitors. It's all about absolute, total control. Now, in any of these power struggles, what's the most valuable thing? Information, which leads us to intercept. A key move is always to intercept something important while it's on its way somewhere, like a coded message or supply shipment. I mean, this is straight out of a spy thriller, right? One intelligence agency manages to intercept a coded message meant for another, and just like that, they change the entire game. You know, sometimes the smartest move isn't a direct attack at all. Sometimes it's to provoke your enemy. You deliberately poke and prod them, trying to make them angry so they'll make a rash decision, a mistake you can capitalize on. Think about that CEO again. They might release a statement that sounds kind of crazy or aggressive. Why? Not to share info, but to provoke their competitor into doing something stupid. It's a total chess move. Okay, our last word here is a little different. It's not about conflict, it's about celebration. Jubilee. It actually comes from the Hebrew word for a ram's horn, which was blown to kick off a huge 50-year celebration. And here's where it gets really poignant. In 1887, just a few years before everything fell apart for her, Queen Liliuokalani actually traveled to London for Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee. Just imagine. She was there, witnessing the absolute height of the British Empire, with no idea that her own kingdom was on the verge of collapse. All right, now let's take these words, abdicate, assume, bungle, dominate, and see how they became the script for the final tragic act of the Hawaiian kingdom. So here she is, Queen Liliuokalani. She comes to the throne in 1891. But the kingdom she inherits, well, it's already in trouble. It's being completely dominated by powerful American businessmen, mostly wealthy sugar planters. So yeah, she inherited a crisis. You can see here how the power was literally being ripped away from the monarchy and handed over to the planters. This whole thing had really kicked into high gear just a few years earlier, in 1887. Her brother, the king, was forced, literally at gunpoint by an armed militia, to sign this thing called the Bayonet Constitution. And what it did was gut the monarchy's power. It also put in these property rules that meant most Native Hawaiians couldn't even vote anymore. All the control shifted right into the hands of those foreign planters. Then, in 1893, that same group of businessmen overthrew her completely. 2 years later, her supporters tried to fight back, but their rebellion was just bungled. It was disorganized and failed almost immediately. The new government, which was led by a man named Sanford Dole, arrested the queen and hundreds of her followers, and then they gave her the most terrible choice imaginable. They told her, abdicate your throne, give it up forever, or we will execute your supporters. But this whole story isn't just about a bunch of sugar barons. No, there were much bigger things happening on the world stage. Huge global forces that were pulling Hawaii into a new reality it couldn't escape. And here's something you might not know about the queen. While she was imprisoned in her own palace, she wasn't just sitting there as a political prisoner. She was an incredible composer. In fact, it was during this time that she composed one of the most famous songs to ever come out of Hawaii, Aloha O. We hear it today and think of it as a beautiful song of farewell. But for her, writing it in that room, it was a heartbreaking tribute to the kingdom she had lost. The final nail in the coffin really came in 1898. The Spanish-American War breaks out, and suddenly the United States desperately needs a naval base right in the middle of the Pacific to support its campaign in the Philippines. And what's the perfect spot? Hawaii. That huge geopolitical need basically ended all debate. The U.S. moved in and officially annexed the islands. And this brings us right back to where we started, back to that flag. After she was eventually pardoned, the Queen lived out her days as a private citizen. Then, in 1917, she got the news that the first Native Hawaiians had been killed in World War I, fighting for America. And that's when it clicks. Her raising the American flag that day, it wasn't surrender, not at all. It was a deep, powerful act of mourning. It was her way of showing solidarity with her people, who were now dying under a new flag. It was a final, tragic aloha-o. So I want to leave you with a challenge. Put yourself in this history. Imagine you're the Queen's most trusted protector. Your secret letters have been intercepted by the new government. What do? How would you proclaim your position? Try using 3 of the words we've talked about to write a short diplomatic statement. What can you possibly say when you're facing a power you can't defeat, but that you absolutely refuse to surrender to?
Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an update. I'll see you in the next one.